Welcome to Narrow Gauge in the Garden, and in this series we're going to be looking at some great garden railways up and down the country. Now when I came outside I had a problem. I don't actually have a garden, but what I did have was a narrow stretch of land up the side of the building, and I reckon if you can get a garden railway into that, you can get one anywhere. Okay, so that's my railway, but I think lots of other people have got the same problem, and that is less and less space to play with. So I went to Lancashire to see the railway of Peter and Nick Harling, and they've squeezed a veritable empire into nothing much bigger than a backyard. Hello Nick, it's nice to see you. And
yes, welcome to the railway.
Thank you. And it's really good to see another small line.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Shoehorning into the backyard here.
Because you said that you had quite a lot of difficulty realising whether you were actually going to get a railway in here at all in the first place.
Yeah, to be honest, we were seriously worried. It's very narrow. I think it's only 9 feet wide,
right.
By about 20 odd feet long.
Yeah.
And we'd been used to a much larger garden before this. So yeah, there were serious worries about whether we could actually do it.
Okay, so can you tell us about the master plan? Because you obviously had to think about planning this really carefully to get so much in. So, you know, if we start down that end, how did it all go together?
Well, we decided that because we had to think very carefully about the individual spaces we had available to us, and we had, as I say, quite a few buildings remaining from the old railway that we needed to cram in somehow. So we thought we'd go for kind of a rural area at the bottom there, which features a public house, the farm and the barn. And then we went for the actual village street scene itself, with the church on the kind of the hill there leading down to the railway station, and the signal box and all that kind of stuff around by the railway station as well. The interesting thing about all the buildings is they're actually based on real buildings. So for instance, the castle is based on Clitheroe Castle, which is a town quite close to where we are here. The public house is based on a pub, the Stag Inn up in Cumbria. The church is based on the church at Horton and Ribblesdale in the Yorkshire Dales, and they're all like kind of individual places, and they've been modelled on actual prototypes. So that's quite nice, you know, for people in the know. You kind of recognise, oh, yeah, that's Horton and Ribblesdale Church.
Track work, I reckon, is probably Pico.
It is, that's right, that's right.
But you've set it into cement?
Essentially, yes, a sand and cement mix, which gives, I mean, we kind of experimented with ballast before, but to be honest, you know, once it rains, your ballast is washed away. So your sand and cement mix gives a good kind of solid base and a good kind of scale look to it without looking too Toy Townish. And it's also a good kind of breeding ground for mosses and that kind of thing. So through the woodland section, we've got a lot of moss growth there. Some people kind of add moss spores to their mix to encourage that kind of growth, and that's a common trick. We actually haven't had to do that because we're in such a damp environment here. You know, it thrives by itself, so there's no problem there at all.
And it certainly does give that sort of real buried in the earth narrow gauge effect, doesn't it?
That's it, and it's that narrow gauge look that you're after. You see a lot of railways, you know, and you can see all the sleepers and everything, you know, and they've got very neat and tidy ballast. You know, if you look at the old Corris books and all that kind of stuff, the Tallylin in its heyday, you could hardly see the rails, let alone the sleepers.
But given all that concrete, you've had to think very carefully about wiring and things like that in advance, haven't you, for all the lights that go on around the various bits of the railway. So how did you go about that particular task?
Well, yeah, I mean, as we set up, we had the track down, and then came the placement of the buildings. We knew that we wanted to light the buildings, the station buildings and some of the village buildings, and we have street lights as well. And so before we did the final kind of concrete setting of it, we had to make sure that everything was placed, and there was a lot of kind of umming and ahhing and kind of getting down all fours and thinking, does that look right in that position? Let's move this building sideways and see if it looks better, to try and make the town look as if it had grown organically, as any village would do, you know, rather than it had just been plonked there. And I think we've succeeded in that.
So where next? What do you think is your next sort of job? What future plans have you got for the line?
We obviously, because of the limitations of space, we would probably have to demolish the back wall of the house to extend the line in any way. So we're thinking seriously about that. But I mean, the main probably thing that we're going to do is try and sharpen up some of the detailing, really add even more realism to what we've got, and build up the stock as well, because at the moment, because we've made this transfer from large to small stock, we need to kind of build up that stock base.
So you really have gone for the idea of the total sort of railway environment here, haven't you, really, rather than just a track to run trains on?
Absolutely. It's the whole picture we're going for. We want to be able to kind of, you know, sit here, be it on a lovely balmy summer's evening or when we've just had a fresh snowfall, and think, yes, that looks like the real thing.
I'll have to ask you, on your website it says, or you always end off with no passport required. Where does that come from?
That comes from the fact that it's called the Pimlico Tramway. We're named after the house, which is called Pimlico House. But there was a wonderful film from the 1950s called Passport to Pimlico, Stanley Holloway, and that's where it comes from, yeah. Excellent. So you don't need a passport to come here.
Right. Well, I have to say, I think it is an inspirational railway, and it just shows what you can do in really a very small space. You don't need a large garden to do a good garden railway.
Absolutely not.
So that was the Pimlico tramway. I love those stone buildings and I think they fit superbly into that setting. Now in the next programme, we'll see what you can do if you've got a really big garden. See you then.
Thank you.